guys.
Okay.
As mentioned, I'm Amy Navejas. I'm the executive director with the North Carolina Down Syndrome Alliance. So just briefly about myself, as you may have gathered from my last name, my husband is Hispanic, and he has been in the military for a long time. He retired around 2019, and he's teaching for the Navy. I met him when I was in law school, and we have three amazing kiddos here together, and we live in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been in nonprofits for over 15 years, leading a variety of different organizations, most of them health-centered, but not all. So I really am very passionate about the work that we're doing and the impact that we make. I will tell you that of all the organizations I've worked with, the mission at NCDSA resonates the most with me. So that's very meaningful to me personally. But about the org. So North Carolina Down Syndrome Alliance really aims to connect and support individuals with Down syndrome and their family members, and that's across the state of North Carolina. So we'll go into that a little bit further and how we go about executing that mission and making sure that we are making the greatest impact. So we are the only grassroots statewide nonprofit that is focusing on individuals with Down syndrome and their family members. Our organization was started in the 90s by a group of parents who realized that there just wasn't the support that their children needed, and they wanted to come together to help create more of a sense of community and have a stronger voice together. We're not part of a national chain. We're really that grassroots piece. We have a local board of directors who govern our organization at the high level, and then I do all the day-to-day decision making. We've got a really cool, close-knit family group of parents who support one another. And at least half of our board and staff are family members of individuals with Down syndrome, which is a nice touch. But then we also mix that in with people who have more of a board governance perspective as well. Oh, too far. So just a little bit of background. I won't go through all of this. We started out triangle-based as TDSN, the Triangle Down Syndrome Network. And as we continued to grow and evolve, we realized, it's great to serve the triangle, but we have an entire state that was really lacking a lot of resources in many areas. There are some Down syndrome alliances in pockets like Wilmington and Charlotte, but that still leaves a lot of open space where they don't have the resources and the services that are necessary. So you'll see that around 2020, we actually shifted and became the North Carolina Down Syndrome Alliance, with the intention being that we could help support all of those other families that didn't have the information they need. I've run into families even in Fayetteville who said, when I talk to them about their child with Down syndrome and what I do, they've said, well, I didn't realize there were any other families here. I didn't know. I thought I was the only one. And that's far from the truth, but often the perception. So this is the team, just as an overview. Again, myself as the executive director, Christy Cooper is my assistant director. She's amazing. She has a lot of knowledge in the nonprofit sector, also a parent, and a lot of governance knowledge there as well. Micah Rocha is a special education teacher and our program coordinator. Liza Narducci, operations. Emma Wissick is an individual who has Down syndrome herself. She's a young adult in her 20s, and she serves as our family support assistant. She does a phenomenal job. Betsy John Lane is our family support coordinator. We have Stephanie Mergen, helps navigate families, so pair them with resources. We have Courtney as our bookkeeper, and then Alyssa as marketing. So how are we funded? We as an organization run primarily off of individual contributions and then our events. So our Triangle Buddy Walk, I would invite you all to attend. It's a huge sort of homecoming party. We do it at Sug Farm in Holly Springs, and that's our largest fundraiser event where we get our operational dollars. We also have an inclusion gala that we hold in around March of every year, and then grants, and we want to try and provide our services for free. So that's really the reasoning behind needing to have these fundraisers and other income sources provided. So the fun stuff. So what is Down syndrome? And there's a lot on here, but don't get too caught up in the weeds, and I'm happy to answer questions. But trisomy 21 is the type of Down syndrome that most individuals have, 95%, and it's that third copy of the 21st chromosome. That's really what it boils down to from a scientific perspective, is that there are children who are born that have one extra chromosome, and it's on the 21st, so that's Down syndrome. Mosaic is less common, but it's when there are 3 copies on some cells, but not on others. And then translocation is when there's a part or a partial copy. Down syndrome is named after Dr. Down. So a lot of people, you might hear Down's syndrome, but it's actually singular. It's Down syndrome. It is the most common chromosomal abnormality. I did not realize that for a long time until I became more ingrained in this community. So that's been really interesting for me to learn. I think once you become a part of the community, you see it so much more often and you're like, oh my gosh, how was I missing this? How did I not know? But it's amazing how you'll notice the differences. Roughly half of all children born with Down syndrome will have a heart condition, and many of those will require heart surgery. On the left of my screen, you will see baby Civil here. This is her just after her heart surgery, which often takes place in the early months. And then below is actually Civil last year. Healthy, strong, really doing well, but that's a really scary time frame. And many of our families will speak about that scary time in the early months, and they will express how their baby was essentially in congestive heart failure. And yet they couldn't have heart surgery yet because they have to get to a certain weight. It's like 15 pounds. It's something that feels really low, but when you're trying to keep a baby awake who's in congestive heart failure and can't stay awake because their heart's not able to do its job properly, it's a really, really challenging time for families. And they're just constantly trying to get the baby to eat so that they can get them up to weight and have their surgery. But again, as you see here, Civil's doing great now. She's over that hump, but it's a really scary and challenging time for families. And then the last note on this slide is that individuals with Down syndrome usually do require lots of therapies to grow and maintain their skills. So you'll hear about kids with Down syndrome who are in occupational therapy and physical therapy, speech therapy, lots of different services to make sure that they can maintain skills. And that's often due to low muscle tone, which is common, which takes us here. So why is research important? So we at the Down Syndrome Alliance, we don't conduct research, but we do advocate for research with individuals with Down syndrome. And that's important for a couple reasons. One, we want to know more about Down syndrome. But second, we want to make sure that people with Down syndrome are included in studies, because then we know how medications will impact them and we can have more knowledge behind those prescriptions, as opposed to, well, we aren't sure if this will interact in a different way. And traditionally, there have been a lot of exclusions related to Down syndrome in the research sector. So we are advocating heavily for the inclusion there.
Amy?
Yes.
Our interpreter is asking that you slow down just a little bit.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. We all do it. He normally, if I speak, he has to remind me too.
Yes. And feel free to stop me if I do that again.
Will do. Will do.
One factor that a lot of people don't realize is that there are some medical conditions that are less common in people with Down syndrome. There are also some conditions that are more common. I think that this really reiterates the importance of research. So, for example, individuals with Down syndrome have much lower odds of solid cell tumors. Who knew? That's crazy. And really, the keys to solving some of these really serious medical conditions could lie within individuals with Down syndrome if we fund it properly and conduct that research. They also have fewer UTIs, less incidence of diabetes and heart disease. But there are some things that are more common and that are real concerns for family members, like certain blood cancers. And we also have a lot of research coming out now about Alzheimer's, because the incidence is significant of Alzheimer's in adults with Down syndrome, much more common than in the general population. We are, we'll go back here, really excited to be partnering with UNC to launch the medical clinic. It actually started in March of this year, and that is their Down syndrome clinic to help provide some additional resources to families. Because as I mentioned, it's very common. And so we want to make sure there's sufficient resources for the families in need. These are just a few of our programs and adorable children over here. Have you ever seen cuter artists in your life? We do a lot of things. Probably what we're most known for would be our Welcome Baby program. So when a family gets a diagnosis and finds out that their child either in pregnancy will have Down syndrome or at birth does have Down syndrome, we reach out as soon as we're aware to congratulate the parents, to let them know that we are here to support them. And we also pair them with a trained parent mentor. The important piece of that is letting them have someone who's walked that path. As you can imagine, and Amber can obviously speak to this, but getting that diagnosis is really overwhelming, and there is a myriad of very strong emotions and kind of a roller coaster that families are going through. And it's very important to us that they know that they are paired with someone who understands it, who's not going to judge them for their thoughts and their fears and their concerns and their joys, but will be there to walk that path with them. So that is very important. We also do a learning institute with conference and support for children in their school settings and advocating for inclusion in the classroom settings there. We help work with advocacy, and I'll talk about that on some future slides. Just before I got on this call, one of the representatives called me on my cell phone. So I was hoping it would be a short call because you have to take those calls when they call you. We also do a lot around social enrichment. So this is providing opportunities for that community that I mentioned before. So letting families find other families who've been there or who understand the frustrations. It's important that our families don't compare their children because that can be really discouraging. So having people who really get that and aren't going to be comparing is also, I think, a really nice perk. So lots of events for support, not only for parents, but also for people with Down syndrome so they can socialize and have friends, and also for siblings. And then at the bottom, we have support at every age. And that's our family navigator, where any question that comes in, it might be, I need a day resource center for my brother, or we're thinking about moving to North Carolina. What do government resources look like for someone with Down syndrome? And Stephanie will work with them to find the resources and information and answers to their questions. So this is another one of my heart babies. This is baby Georgia. NCDSA aims to be that first resource for families. So whether they're stuck in a situation, they aren't sure what to do, if they just got a diagnosis, no matter what is going on, what hurdle they might face or question they might have, we really aim to be that safe place and that understanding resource that they can call. A quick mission moment. I got a phone call last year as I was in the office, and it was the Department of Social Services. There was a young boy whose mother had passed away. He had Down syndrome. His mother had passed away, and his father had been in a car accident and temporarily was not able to care for him. So they were needing a foster home temporarily until dad could recover medically. And NCDSA really took that on and started looking into, our families, our resources to see if we knew of a good safe home that would understand some of his behaviors and some challenges that might come along with his diagnosis to support him. We were very fortunate to have a wonderful family step up, and they were able to help keep him for several months until dad was healthier and he was able to go back home with dad. We believe at NCDSA that every single child deserves a joyous welcome. That's not a political statement, it's just a fact. Regardless of where families are or what their choices are, every child that's born, we believe, should be welcomed. The unfortunate reality is that many of our families only ever heard, "I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And what they'll tell you is that at some point that starts to make you question, like, what are they sorry for? What's going to happen? What am I getting myself into? Instead of really setting the tone of congratulations on your new baby. This is really exciting. And then we want to present facts. So we still can say there will be challenges, but we can also say, congrats, this is a huge blessing. So we want to make sure that we are presenting a balanced welcome to all of our families. This is just another touch on the welcome baby bags I mentioned. So we greet those families. We also mail them some items to help welcome their baby, and we give them resources and information on what they can expect, what might be common, what questions they may have. And this is on the bottom is me and sweet baby Lucy. Part of what we do is a medical outreach program, and this ties in, I think, to that joyous welcome. Our medical providers are really often setting the tone for the parent's reception of this really life-changing news. And so, as I mentioned before, if that tone is, "I'm really sorry, I'm going to leave you to grieve. This is the news," as opposed to, "Congratulations on your new baby." Um, we are showing that there are, these indications for Down syndrome. Let me provide you more information on what that will look like. Yes, there could be challenges. There will be challenges, but there's also all of these positives, and here's what they can do. There are people with Down syndrome who are working jobs and living independently, so that we're just giving that much more balanced presentation. And that, again, is something we hear very often from parents that they wish there was some focus on. So that's why we have our medical outreach. Also, because we want the medical providers across the state to have a better understanding of what Down syndrome is, what they should be checking for at all of their checkups, what common indicators are, things like regression disorder. We want them to be aware of those types of conditions. I mentioned we do learning support, and this is just a kind of a recap there. We have a conference every year. We help support children in their school setting. If necessary, we'll help parents in the IEP process, which is their individualized education plan. A lot of parents want their children included in a general education classroom. Some don't, and that's fine. That's 100% their decision. But if they do, our staff will try to help support them and help them understand what their rights are in educating their child. And we believe every child deserves an appropriate education. Our learning program also helps parents gain the tools to reinforce what their children are learning in school. So children with Down syndrome are going to require more repetition. They're very visual learners. And so in school, they might be working on ABCs. We try to teach parents how you can reiterate that at home, because if they get it at school and they're really getting it at home in the right way, they have the better chance of success. So we've got some teachers on staff who help with this endeavor. Advocacy, so that relationship building with our lawmakers is an important piece of our efforts at the NCDSA. We also participate on legislative action committees, and when it's appropriate, we'll issue action alerts telling those who are followers of us, hey, this is coming down the pipeline, you should be aware. And what you can do to help make a difference is contact your legislature. Here's the messaging we want them to have. I mentioned social enrichment. This is a large part of what we do, but again, it's that community building. Yesterday, I had a play date in the Fayetteville area that we hosted. We do it every month. I had 5 little girls who were 1 year old. All of them were 1 year old. and I had a 3-year-old. But just a wonderful group. And this again is about camaraderie. It's about having a support network so that when things are challenging, there are other people who've been there and they're like, we get it, you're not alone. This is a challenge and we understand where you're coming from. There's some of our adorable kiddos. So where are we going in the future? We recently became an accredited organization. We are still working on growing out our organization, making sure we have the maximum positive impact we possibly can on our families at all of their age ranges. Like, it's not just those new babies, it's all the way through adulthood. We want to make sure we reiterate those joyous welcomes, and we also want to make sure we work on truly serving the entire state to the extent that we can as a small organization. So what can you do if you want to be involved? You can volunteer, you can give, you can attend and join us. I think you'll be bitten by the bug just in the same way that my family has. Share about the organization. Consider inclusive employment. If you happen to be in a position where you're an employer or you are able to make hiring decisions, consider someone who might have some differences or be neurodiverse, because often they can be phenomenal contributions to your team, just in the way that Emma here in the middle is for our team. Ask questions, encourage others to do the same. I thought this was interesting. The assistant director has a son with Down syndrome, and she said they were at the park one day and another little boy noticed her son Kellen and was pointing and asking questions, and the grandfather was there and he slapped his hand and told him, not to ask, and kind of ushered him away. But for Christy, she said, that's not what we want. She said, I know my son has Down syndrome. It's not going to hurt my feelings for you to come up and ask. And I would much rather you encourage your children to ask questions respectfully than to punish them and usher them away, because then our children are associated with punishment and bad. So the large picture that I get from most families is, we know our kid is a little bit different. We want to embrace that, and we want your children to ask questions so we can make it an okay thing for them to approach and to address differences and understand them. So that's a positive piece that I've heard from a family that I think is important, because none of us want our kids to point. We feel bad about that, but it's important to have the conversation. This is our why. So these are all of the kiddos and team members and our organization. So this is the children of my team. So this is why they're working here every day, the passion that they have behind the organization. Having been at several nonprofits, there you can't teach passion. It's there or it's not. And it's here for this team. And that's something that I'm very proud of at the organization that we have, is that we're here for the right reasons and we want to make a positive impact. And that goes for all of us. So those are our cuties. And what questions do you all have for me or Amber, who is also on the call, and she's one of our board members and a mom?